Maybe you are muted.
Thank you, Nozomi. Yes, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the call. And many thanks to the Plant Health Initiative for having me on the call this afternoon to present. And thank you, Nozomi, for extending the invitation. This is greatly appreciated. Uh, I'd like to start by saying that when a disease threatens a crop, its effect ripples across economic. Um it ripples effects goes beyond economic, social, environmental, and the nutrition systems. I like us to imagine a banana farmer who was once thriving and now facing a decline in yield due to the sudden outbreak of banana bunchy top on his farm. Now, this suggests to us that there's an urgent need for us to, to assess the farmer's knowledge about the invasion of banana bunchy top and then the level of awareness of the farmers, as well as the control strategies farmers put in place in order to combat such a disease. I'll quickly go on to share the outline of my study. The outline basically will be looking at the overview of the banana production in Nigeria. Okay. I guess my slide isn't.
No, we can see it, Lydia. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yeah. So the outline, overview of banana in Nigeria, and then we'll go on to banana bunchy top disease. Thereafter, we'll talk about the study methodology of the study, and then we'll go on to the findings. And after the findings, we'll discuss the conclusion and the recommendation. I quickly go on to banana production in Nigeria. Banana stands tall as a highest producing country in the continent. And bananas are among the most important food crops in Nigeria. You can readily see banana available across the nation. And then we see the distribution of the area, the production, and the yield. We have over 500 hectares of land involved in banana production in Nigeria and making it sixth rank in Africa. In terms of production, we also see Nigeria producing about 7.3 million tons as the second rank in Africa. We see the distribution in the graph here, showing that Nigeria is closely following after Uganda. And the yield per hectare shows that Nigeria produces 12.9 tons per hectare in Africa. This is a very instrumental capability in this country, making it a cornerstone, for food security, nutrition, and rural livelihood. Now, bananas are versatile when it comes to the consumption. About 75% of the bananas sold is as fresh fruits. And then we also have the value addition process that goes on with banana. 18% are used as chips, which is a snack in Nigeria. And then we also have bananas used as flour. Now we talk about the importance of banana. This will help us to have a background information on how important banana is in the country. Banana is a perennial crop and is a dependable crop for house smallholder farmers, contributing to stable income. How? Bananas are able to be available all through the year. All through the year in Nigeria, you'll find out that bananas are available. However, bananas has its own peak season between October and February of each year. Bananas are of diverse culinary uses. You can consume banana raw, you can consume banana cooked, you can consume banana as chips, and making opportunities for both youth and women, which are very keen when it comes to value addition. Banana are also produced as mixed crop. Farmers in Nigeria mostly produce bananas with yam, cocoyam, papaya, with the average size of 0.5 hectares. The demand for banana is actually increasing because there's a high demand for it in the urban areas. Many a times when one visits the hospital, you'll find out that people that see the dietitian are encouraged to have bananas included in their diets. And so there's been a high demand for bananas in the urban areas. Now we want to talk about banana bunchy top in Nigeria. Banana bunchy top is a destructive virus disease ravaging banana farms in Nigeria. We see the map of Africa showing how BBTD has been able to gain access into the countries in Africa. As we speak today, BBTD is present in 18 countries in Africa, which is a thing of concern. The BBTD infection results in stunted growth and severe yield loss. There are cases where farmers have about 100% yield loss, which is a thing of concern for us. What are the visible symptoms when BBTD ravages a farm? We have a number of them: dark green discontinuous streaks on leaves and midribs. We also have the leaf margin, chlorosis and drying, russeting or bunching of trees, severely stunted and bunching of infected suckers, and lastly, we have 90 to 100 production loss. There's basically no farmer that starts planting in a planting season that has a mindset of having a yield loss, not to talk about 90 to 100 production loss. And then BBTD is transmitted via banana aphids, which is scientific name Pantalonia nigronervosa, and as well as infected planting material. The aphids is widespread in all banana producing areas. And in as much as we have banana bunchy top ravage in the farms, we also know that there are control measures that farmers should put into consideration in order to be able to combat the spread of this disease. One of which is eroding infected fields and the use of clean planting materials. Then we see the display of what it looks like when a tree or banana palm is ravaged by BBTD on the screen. Now we want to go into BBTD in Nigeria. Firstly, BBTD gained access in DRC Congo and then it moved on to Nigeria in the year 2011 to 2012. It was first identified in Idologun. Idologun is like a community in the boundary between Nigeria and Benin. The widespread actually has been through the movement of infected planting material. And there's been a various control measures that have been in place, but it keeps limiting the spread to 4 local government areas in Ogun State, which happens to be the study areas for the study. We have Ipokia, we have Yewa South, Yewa North, and Adeldo. Then Idologun community is actually situated in Yewa South local government in Ogun State. Ogun State has 20 local government areas. And then we also see in the screen where it shows the hotspot where BBTB has been noticed and the areas where it has been affected within the region. There's been a lot of efforts in order to combat the spread of BBTD. As part of the Alliance for BBTV Control, one of which has been to raise awareness on BBTD through Stop Bunchy Top campaign, as well as advocacy through community leaders. Community leaders have been interacted with in order for them to pass the information on to the farming communities, and as well as we also have the extension officials. There's also been a collaborative effort and partnership with the quarantine agency, NAQS, and as well as the community. And lastly, there's been strict controls on the movement of planting materials from the affected regions to the unaffected regions. All of these efforts have been in place in order to curb the spread of BBTD in Ogun State. Now we want to talk about seed sourcing. What is the banana seed sourcing system in Ogun State? We see the display of suckers and tissue culture. But it's alarming that over 90% of the planting materials used in the region is through the sucker. And then farmers have a preference of reusing planting materials collected from their own farms or neighboring farms, talking about the social interaction. And there's been limited certified seed system. There are no certified seed system when you compare to other grains. So banana seed system in the region basically is through social interaction. A farmer goes to another farm, he sees a seed or the banana tree, and then he requests for the planting material from the owner. So banana farmers in the region basically have limited access to quality planting material, making it impossible, totally impossible to curb the spread of BBTD in the region. Insufficient targeted investment in banana seed propagation system, as well as the limited awareness about the spread of the disease with planting material, continues to foster the spread of BBTD across the region. And the informal exchange and the use of planting material from local farms are significant factors in the spread of BBTD. Now we want to look at the core, which is the relationship between gender, the seed system, and BBTD. BBTD persists in the affected areas, in the affected regions, due to the reuse of planting materials. And many a times the farmers lack awareness. They are not aware that BBTD spreads due to the use of the suckers in the environment. And so many farmers lack awareness about disease spread through the planting materials. And then there's been a social and gender dynamics relationship that shape banana production practices and the seed system. So it's important for us to see the social interaction when it comes to the banana production practices and the seed system in the region. Understanding this peculiarity, understanding this interaction will guide us not only to improve the seed distribution, it will not only guide us to strengthen BBTD containment measures, but also to design targeted interventions that reflect the community realities. Now we want to talk about the study objectives, one of which was to assess the structure of banana seed system in Ogun State, investigate the role of gender in seed sourcing, selection, and distribution among banana farmers, examine the relationship between seed system practices and the spread of BBTD, evaluate the impact of BBTD on banana yield across gender, and identify the knowledge gaps among male and female farmers regarding control measures. In order for us to achieve these goals, we adopted a targeted methodology, taking into consideration the geographical and the demographic capabilities. Now, for the methodology, the study area was in Ogun State. Ogun State has 20 local governments, and for the study, we conducted the study in 6 local governments. 3 local governments with high BBTD incidents, Ipokia, Yawa South, and Yawa North. And the 3 local governments without BBTD, Odeda, Imekwafo, and Abeokuta. The study was conducted in 21 communities, 13 which were BBTD regions, and 8 without BBTD. In total, we had 71.6% male represented in our sample size and 28.4% represented for female. Now, the questionnaire asked, we used the questionnaire using the ODK collection form, and then we also engaged with a focus group discussion for some of the objectives. The socioeconomic characteristics, sociocultural activities of men and women in the banana production and seed system was also covered. We see the 2 points where the study was conducted And then we'll also see the distribution, because we wanted you to be to also be part of the survey, and then we also have adults also part of the survey. Now I go on to the awareness. Now we use the descriptive, the logistic regression, and ANOVA in order for us to, statistical packages in order for us to get the results for the study. Now I go on to the awareness of BBTD. For us to be able to capture this objective, what we did was to display some pictures, pictorial display to the farmers to be able to see if they had seen such pictures on their farmlands. But participants' knowledge on BBTD assessed using images of healthy and BBTD affected bananas, plants, suckers, and aphids. These pictures were shown to the farmers, and it was surprising to note that 22% of the male and 16.9% of the female farmers recognized the disease-affected plants. However, majority of the farmers knew that the plant was affected, but they couldn't sync it, they couldn't trace it down to BBTD. And then in the control regions, we only found 4% of the male recognizing the affected plants. In fact, the female were surprised to see a banana plant grow in this way. So there's been a low awareness about banana bunchy top disease and insufficient information about disease transmission through planting materials in the region. They also wanted to find out about BBTD occurrence in their farmlands. In the BBTD prevalent areas, we found out that 3/4 of the respondents reported infection on their farms. And then we have the distribution of more women confirming that BBTD was present on their farms. And then in the control regions, we also saw that the results displayed that 13.2% reported that BBTD were available on their farms, which is likely to the fact that their farms might be located in the BBTD affected areas. And then we also wanted to note the year in which these farmers noticed BBTD on their farms. And the year was between 2016 to 2020, with more women noticing BBTD. That's to tell us that there's been a huge decline. There's a probability of a huge decline in terms of the yield that we experienced by the women. And we also wanted to find out, what do the farmers see BBTD as? Many of them see BBTD as a disease plant, and then locally it is called lebelubo in their local language. And then we see the distribution on farmers that responded that they have seen BBTD on their farms. Some were undecided, they couldn't decide whether or not BBTD has occurred or is occurring on their plantation. So we also wanted to find out from the farmers the knowledge of the spread of BBTD in terms of aphids. And it was also not surprising to note that there is a limited awareness in both the BBTD affected regions and the non-BBTD regions. About 70.8% of farmers were unclear about how BBTD spreads. And then we have the male representation and the women representation, showing that they were not aware of the spread of BBTD. And then in the control regions, we had no one, respond that they knew how BBTD spreads, which tells us that there's an urgent need for education in order for us to have targeted training and awareness programs, to improve the knowledge of the people in the region in order for them to have a better understanding on how BBTD spreads and the control measures to put in place in order to manage the disease. I go on to the socioeconomic characteristics of the farmers. In the region, we noticed that over 70% of the farmers there were involved in agriculture, and that we have 28.4% of the women involved in agricultural activities. Many of the women had other income generating activities. They were involved in trading and other activities. And over 98% of the farmers in both BBTD and non-BBTD region have access to banana seedling. So access to seedling was not an issue, but the concern was if those seedlings were of healthy or clean and healthy planting materials or otherwise. And we also found out that the farm size slightly differs in the BBTD affected regions and the non-BBTD areas. We had average of 1.6 hectares and average of 1.5 in the non-BBTD areas. Many a times the farmers either purchase their seed, the planting material, or they exchange the planting material. And then for the farmers involved in the purchase of planting materials, we notice that many of the farmers in the BBTD zone, that is the region where BBTD is of high incidence, were purchasing their seeds because they began to see the results of exchanging seeds in their region. So we had 25.2% of farmers paying for their planting material, while we had limited percentage in terms of 9.5% of farmers in the non-BBTD region paying for planting material. We also see the socioeconomic distribution. The women were slightly older than the men. We see the farm size, and then the average seed planted per hectare. We notice that the male had more access to planting, to the quantity of seed planted compared to the women. And that's to tell us that there's a gap in the access to planting materials comparing the female banana farmers and the male banana farmers. And then for the seed exchange, we notice that seed exchange is the norm in the region because we have the higher percentage of farmers involved in seed exchange compared to the farmers involved in purchasing of their planting materials. Now we want to talk about the seed system. Using the usage of suckers from both BBTD and non-BBTD zone is obtainable. And the average price of farmers who purchase a planting material is less than $1. In the BBTD zone, it is slightly higher than the non-BBTD zone. We have a 0.35 and then 0.33 in the non-BBTD zone. And basically, majority of the farmers source from their seeds from their neighbors, their family members who are within the community. And oftentimes, farmers evaluate the parent tree performance in terms of yield and fruit quality before selecting their suckers. And in terms of seeds assessment, majority confirm that the assessment they do is the outward appearance. So there's no standardized procedure in order for them to assess their planting material. All they do is just to leave the suckers for about 3 to 4 days to observe if there's going to be a rot or a deterioration, and if there are no signs of damage, such a plant is replanted in their fields. And while we discuss with the farmers, especially for those who buy their planting material, farmers in Olokomeji and Okioko communities in the study area, they mentioned that although they commonly exchange suckers among themselves, they are willing to purchase seeds if necessary. And they are prepared to pay about less than $1 provided the bunches meet the following criteria: high yield, exceptional taste, if the planting material is attractive, and if it has a high income potential. Now we want to look at the seed system practices. In the BBTD prevalent region, over 90% of the farmers are involved in informal sources, getting the planting material from neighbors, reusing the planting materials from their own farmland. And then we have a very minute percentage getting the planting materials from alternatives rather than sourcing in the informal way. And then we also see in the controlled region, 71.7% of the farmers also engage in the informal source. Now, the informal seed systems are a major pathway for BBTV transmission. And it is also a thing of concern that without sustained intervention and ongoing awareness, the areas that are currently free of BBTD, who also rely on the informal seed sources, remains vulnerable to future outbreaks of BBTD if precautions are not taken into consideration. Now, the emergence of BBTD has significantly altered the productivity landscape for banana farmers, particularly in relation to the informal sources of seed system. Now we want to look at the impact of BBTD on their yield. For this, we got the yield before the invasion of BBTD and what is the yield like after the emergence of BBTD in the region. Now, before BBTD period, sucker-based planting was a common practice and the yields were generally stable. In the non-BBTD region, we see the farmers achieved moderate to high yields between 201 to 800 bunches that are being harvested. And then the women also were more concentrated between the 201 to 500 bunches. But after the invasion of BBTD, we noticed a major decline in terms of yield, in terms of their productivity. We had more male members, more male farmers who were in the category of 200 to 500 bunches, reducing to less than 200 bunches. That's to call us to a concern that the invasion of BBTD in this region has a major influence, impacting them negatively in terms of their yield. And the distribution goes on. There's been a shortfall across in each of the categories. We had over 15.2% and the greater than 800 bunches reducing to 4%. So there's a huge decline in terms of their productivity after the emergence of BBTD in the region. Now we want to look at the control measure and to also see the knowledge gaps. Now there are various effective control measures that farmers are involved with in order to curb and combat the spread of BBTD in their regions. But over 70 of the farmers rely on cutting and uprooting the infected plants. And then they follow it up by burning to prevent further spread. This method is widely practiced by both male and female farmers in the region. However, we find that about 10.4% of farmers prefer the use of chemicals because they could afford chemicals. Because chemicals are of high cost, leading to farmers preferring or preference to the primary control method, which is the cutting down and the uprooting of the infected plant, which to them is cost effective. Then we also see some other farmers within the 10.4% that use the glyphosate to the infected trees. They inject it, but many of the farmers are of the opinion that this method to control the BBTD is not as effective like cutting down and uprooting the infected plants. We also have some other category of farmers who are involved with weeding and maintenance of the field, clearing the mats, manual application to support rehabilitate the infected plants. Now, many of those farmers in this category feel that BBTD is associated with soil fertility. And then it is believed that by application or applying manure, the application of manure is going to help the soil fertility and that the tree, which has been affected by BBTD, will begin to grow as it should, indicating that there's a knowledge gap in understanding BBTD, the spread of BBTD, and the effect of BBTD on their fields. Now, what are the implications of our study? Banana seeds sourcing and social network. We'll also be discussing about the seed selection and quality practices, disease transmission and awareness, policy and institutional gaps. In terms of farmer seed sourcing, we see clearly from our study that farming households rely majorly, predominantly on informal sources from their own farms and from neighboring farms. And then there's a lot of social ties, cultural norms when it comes to seed exchange, driving seed exchange in the region. There's also a limited role in terms of government institution in seed assets. We have government institution play a minimal role in seed assets. Coming to seed selection, we see that farmers prioritize availability, yield potential, and the mother plant in order for them to select their planting material. Physical inspection and customary cleaning methods, such as peeling the suckers, wood ash treatment, are used to assess the seed quality. Informal seeds exchange contributes to BBTD spread basically through infected suckers. And then we also see there's a low awareness among farmers on how BBTD spreads and the symptoms of BBTD among the farmers. Now, in terms of policy and institutional gap, there is a need for stronger institutional support in the seed distribution such that we'll have more certified seed systems applicable for banana. And then there's an high importance of disease awareness campaign and training on BBTD management, both in the BBTD affected region and as well as the non-affected regions. And thereafter, there's a demand for driven breeding program that should reflect farmers' trait preference, because when new varieties, when new planting materials are in place, farmers will only use if their trait preference are also put into consideration while the breeding program is established. Now we want to look at the findings of BBTD across Nigeria. We selected 2 findings to see how we collaborate our finding in the study. Gender roles in sourcing and sharing of banana planting material. The key findings here is seed sharing is largely informal and socially driven. And then harvesting is male dominated with women assisting. And we also see that farmers in the non-BBTD areas had larger farmlands compared to farmers in the affected areas. They will also look at understanding gender dynamics in banana crops, insights from Nigeria, Burundi, and Indonesia. And the focus basically was to explore how gender dynamics influence BBTD management and seed system practices. Male farmers were more likely to receive training in banana production and disease management compared to the women who missed out due to household responsibility. And we also see from this study that women had limited access to seeds network, which are crucial for sourcing disease-free material. And there's also been noticed that there's an unequal access to training and resources, hampering effective BBTD containment in Nigeria. In summary, BBTD is a persistent threat to banana and plantain production in Nigeria, devastating the farms in the region. And despite ongoing management efforts, awareness among farmers about the disease and the risk factors contributing to the spread is very low. Many of them have the opinion that the infected plant is associated to soil rather than BBTD. Farmers continue to use suckers from disease-affected areas, and informal seed exchange remained a crucial means of accessing planting materials. Lastly, both male and female farmers rely heavily on sucker propagation, often guided by tradition, and they have limited access to other disease-free alternatives. In conclusion, to curb BBTD effectively, there is an urgent need to firstly promote certified disease-free planting materials, also to stretching the farmer sensitization and training, as well as integrating gender-responsive approaches into seed system intervention, making resources available to farmers, empowering farmers with knowledge, equitable access to is key to building a resilient banana production system. And tackling BBTD is not just a technical challenge, but also a social one. And then being a social one is also translated to environmental, moving on to economy, and then the nutrition system. Our recommendation, we have 5 recommendations. Promoting clean material involves scaling up the production and the distribution of certified, disease-free suckers and tissue culture plantlets. In order for us to intensify farmers' sensitization, there is a need for us to launch awareness campaign on BBTD symptoms, the transmission, and the prevention to curb or to combat the spread of BBTD across the region. There's also a need for us to strengthen surveillance and diagnostics. Now we have to deploy early detection tools and train extension agents in BBTD identification. There's a need for us to transit from the informal gifting to a regulated seed exchange system, thereby encouraging community seed banks with traceable sources and sanitation protocols. Lastly, is we integrate gender-responsive strategies. Gender dynamics actually play a key role in seed system participation. And then it also empower our women through targeted training sessions. Thank you for listening. I'd like to acknowledge those who have been also part of this study. We have Dr. A.O. Ogunfunmilola, Dr. Kazim, and Mr. Oviashiri. Thank you for listening.